We're going to take you right now to Ottawa, and you're looking there at the program at Dr. Dean Oliver, who's the acting Vice President and Director General of the Canadian War Museum. CBC News with breaking news earlier today that the federal government is contributing money to help buy back land from around the Juno Beach Centre to make sure it doesn't become condos near the site. So let's listen in live. We have translation for you. The Veterans Affairs Minister Lawrence MacAulay is going to make the official announcement, but here is the preamble, and it's important to hear in terms of Canada's military history. Let's listen in live on CBC News Network.
The museum's connections to D-Day, to Juno, as some of you, I'm sure, are aware, are simply legion. Its planning and design reflected lessons we learned from field visits to museums and battlefields and other historical sites throughout Northwest Europe.
Those collections include tens of thousands of personal stories, works of art, objects, letters, and recordings from all branches of the military and civilians as well.
Harry Crerar, who led the 1st Canadian Army in Northwest Europe, is just over there. And the German Panther tank, 4th to my left, is a Normandy veteran, captured there by Allied troops. In our Normandy gallery upstairs is Forceful 3, a Sherman tank of the Governor General's Foot Guards, which landed in France in July of 1944, one of the few tank veterans that still survives. And near it is the Victoria Cross of Major David Curry, awarded him for his actions in the fierce battle at Saint-Lambert-sur-Dive in August 1944, a battle during which he didn't sleep for 3 days. Au fil des ans,
over the years, the ranks of volunteers here at the museum have been filled with veterans from Normandy. Our partnership program has included the Juno Beach Centre and other organizations with similar missions.
Côté, who some of you may have known, D-Day veteran, civil servant, diplomat, is one of many witnesses who've shared with this museum their personal stories of the invasion. Côté, un Franco-Albertain,
a Franco-Albertan, Mr. Côté, and a proud Vendeuse, was the main planner of the 3rd Infantry Division, which was to land there on that day in June.
He felt every moment the weight of responsibility for everything the force would need, from food and ammunition to road signs and crosses and medical supplies. He would himself land before noon on June 6th and later be decorated for heroism under fire. D-Day was not any battle. It was the decisive moment in the Western Allies' long road back from the defeats and humiliations of the early war years. The complexity
and the intensity of the operation, the largest operation of its type, goes beyond our imagination. Months of planning, months of accumulating stock, months of building, and of course collecting all the necessary information.
The Germans as to the actual later point of attack, the preparatory reconnaissance, the bombing, the practice landings, specialized weapons, vehicles, and tools that were created, the endless repetition, and all of it, ultimately, in the end, dependent on the vagaries of weather, surprise, luck, and sheer human force of will. For Canada
alone, the day itself involved almost 15,000 soldiers, beginning with the parachutists who landed in the night of June 5th to 6th. There were also some ships that were part of our naval force, as well as aircraft and fighters who were involved.
Part of the greatest military effort our country has ever mustered in a conflict that spanned the globe. And we, of course, on that June morning, were only one of 5 such beaches over nearly 100 kilometers of French coast, facing perhaps the most heavily fortified positions at the time in all of Europe. I add, too, that every soldier, flyer, and sailor, every doctor, every nurse, every chaplain that day in a Canadian uniform was a volunteer, conscription for overseas service here having not yet begun. The
letters reflect their fear and their pride in honoring their country and their presence there, as well as the importance of their service.
Despite the furious German resistance up and down the beach, D-Day had been won. The Allies were ashore in their tens of thousands. Canadians were the farthest inland at sunset, but hundreds of them had fallen, the first of thousands more to come.
French citizens had also suffered terribly, first of all by the enemy occupation and the bombing and operations occurring there.
For all of us is more than a titanic battle. It reminds us powerfully that the defeat of great evil requires great effort, that such effort cannot be borne quickly or alone, and that the bonds forged in war of comradeship and grief, gratitude and hope are worth the effort of their preservation.
Those bonds remain part of our nation and our sense of identity as a country, and still form the basis of our precious international relations.
The D-Day planner I mentioned, a hero who would adamantly never have accepted such a title, had a personal motto dating to his time as a young lawyer that defined his professional life and public service. It was, faire ce qui doit être fait. Do what must be done. And so, on June 6th, they did. Thank you all for helping us to remember. Merci, monsieur.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oliver. And now, I'd like to ask the Minister of Veteran Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense, the Honorable Lawrence MacAulay, to make today's announcement. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Mr. Ambassador, Brigadier General Reno, Dr. Oliver, thank you for your history lesson. It's so important that we remember. I want to welcome everybody here. My colleague Luc Desailly, Member of Parliament, thank you for taking the time to come. It's so important. This is a big day for Canada, a big day for veterans. As Dr. Oliver said, the halls of this museum are full of stories about what Canadians did in Normandy and elsewhere in Europe and around the world during the Second World War. In France, their service and their sacrifices are remembered right where so many of them came ashore in June the 6th, 1944. The Juno Beach Centre overlooks the grounds where Canadians fought so hard so long ago. It pays tribute to the 45,000 Canadians who lost their lives during the Second World War, including 5,500 killed during the Battle of Normandy, and those 381 soldiers and airmen who died on D-Day. Several months ago, we learned of a proposed condo development that was to begin construction right next door to the centre. The development would be going on grounds where so much Canadian blood was spilt. and in order to secure the peace and freedom that we have today. As you would expect, our government was and remains against any development on these sacred grounds. Progress is inevitable, but some parcels of land should never be touched, never. And the grounds around Juno Beach are among them. In Paris last spring, I spoke to France's Minister of Remembrance and Veterans. We agreed on the importance of Canada and France to honor the sacrifice of Canadian soldiers who fell at Juno Beach. And we resolved to work together to protect the historic site for France and Canada. Today, I am pleased to announce that our government and the town of Rocher-sur-Mer has reached an agreement and puts an end to that condo development. We are contributing nearly $4 million towards the investment and will negotiate a 99-year lease to protect the site from any future development. Memorials like the Juno Beach Centre keep alive the achievements and sacrifices of those who served Canada and the world in times of war and peace. And all of us who have benefited from the service must always stand up for the preservation of those commemorative sites. I want to thank the Juno Beach Centre Association for being an essential ally as we work towards this solution. And I would particularly like to thank the Government of France for being such a key ally in this difficulty. In the times we live, it is significant that both our governments recognize that we need to commemorate and preserve the memories of those who fought and died, and it allowed us to prosper in this world. I am so glad that from this point on, the grounds around Juno Beach will be preserved and protected from future developments from this time on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister MacAulay. Si je peux me permettre de répéter très
If I can just very quickly repeat what he said in French, the minister was talking about the major contributions made by Canadians on the beaches of Normandy at Juno Beach starting in 1944. He said that their service is commemorated at the Juno Beach Centre that overlooks the grounds where Canadians all fought so hard so long ago. Earlier this year, the government learned that a developer was planning to begin the construction of condos near the center. This was a group of condos that were to be built on sacred grounds where blood was spilt to ensure our liberty. The government remains opposed to any development of that land, and after discussions between the minister and his counterpart in France, Canada and France agreed on the need to honor the sacrifices of Canadian soldiers who fell at Juno Beach and decided to work together to protect that historic site for France and Canada. And that is why the minister is so proud to announce today that the governments of Canada and France, with the city of Courseulles-sur-Mer, have reached an agreement to purchase land around the centre to protect it from any future development. The Government of Canada will be contributing almost $4 million for this project and will negotiate a 99-year lease. And now I'd like to invite His Excellency, Mr. Michel Miraillet, Ambassador of France to Canada, to say a few words. Ambassador.
Monsieur le ministre,
Minister,
messieurs les parlementaires,
parliamentarians,
monsieur le directeur,
Director General, first of all, I'd like to extend my warm thanks to Minister MacAulay, the Minister of Veterans Affairs, for taking this initiative and for bringing us together in this wonderful war museum to celebrate what the French Republic and Canada have been able to do with respect to the Juno Beach Centre. More than 75 years ago, Canadians that we have not forgotten were courageously fought on the beaches of Normandy. June 6, 1944, 15,000 Canadians landed in the Juno Beach sector. They came from all over Canada, and they had to run and crawl to try and avoid enemy fire. They moved into the towns of Normandy, and some were surprised to hear French spoken with an accent they were not familiar with. But they gave the people hope for liberty. But many, many Canadians died on those beaches in order to contribute to the success of the Overlord operation.
The heroic sacrifice of these Canadian combatants who came from across the Atlantic paved the way to the final victory. Minister, dear friends, be assured that France remains fully aware of the debt it owes to the Canadian people. In this respect, the French Embassy has, since 2014, and in collaboration with the Canadian authorities, processed close to 1,300 files with a view to presenting awards and honors to Canadian veterans. The vast majority of these veterans were involved in the landings in 1944. Pour vous donner un exemple, en septembre 2022, un décret du président de la République a nommé chevalier de la Légion d'honneur un vétéran canadien
named a
âgé de
Canadian
104
veteran aged
habitant de la ville de
104
Sydney,
years
en Nouvelle-Écosse. Ce héros canadien avait perdu l'une de ses jambes dans l'un des
as a
combats pour
recipient
reprendre
of an
l'aéroport
award.
de Caen-Carpiquet.
And he had been involved in an important operation. He will receive that decoration soon because France honors all those who contributed to the liberation of our country and our continent. And we intend to pursue that work of remembrance as long as necessary.
For these reasons, Minister, that the Canadian Juno Beach Memorial Centre, located in Courseulles-sur-Mer in Calvados, is a monument to a unique and defining moment in the shared history of our people. The emotion provoked here by the dispute related to the land near the Juno Beach Centre was very legitimate, given that many Canadians care deeply about the preservation of this memorial site. So do the French people. President Macron had engaged with Prime Minister Trudeau in order to come to a resolution, and you were a major actor of this, Minister. For several months, we have been working to arrive at a solution. Your ministry, the Préfet du Calvados, who played also a crucial role of facilitation between all parties, the offices of the President of the Republic and of the Prime Ministers in Paris, our embassies, the Commune of Courseulles, and the Juno Beach Centre. And I would like also, he's not here with us today, but to thank our former Deputy Minister, Mr. Ledwell, who has been a very important and appreciated partner throughout this process. La solution juridique et financière à laquelle nous sommes parvenus pour mettre fin
legal and financial solution we arrived at in order to ensure there would be no development means that we are making the Juno Beach sector a sanctuary forever. This agreement with the community will also allow us to develop that memorial site, expand it, and ensure there is no interference so that it can be a place of memory for all future generations, and especially young people.
The settlement of this dispute is therefore a further success that we can attribute to the quality of our bilateral relationship. Our countries are linked not only by an exceptional partnership, but also by a close friendship that has lasted these past 400 years. Indeed, we share the same values and commitment to freedom and human dignity, which we must always be ready to defend.
So you've been listening to live coverage here on CBC News Network from Ottawa, a significant announcement from Ottawa. And one that many veterans groups and many who follow Canada's military history be very pleased to hear today, that Canada is contributing some $4 million to make sure that the land in France around the Juno Beach Centre does not become a condo complex. That is the designate ambassador of France to Canada as he concludes his remarks. David Thurton was listening from Ottawa as well, notably as Lawrence MacAulay, the Veterans Affairs Minister, was making this announcement. And we were there right on those beaches back earlier in this year as he took the case to France for funding to make sure that project didn't go ahead. Just bring us up to date on the details, David, and how this is likely to be met.
Yeah, well, CBC has been following this story for a number of months now, and it's a story that's angered a lot of Canadians because, as we kind of heard from the speakers there, and as we know from the history about Canada's contributions to the Second World War, Juno Beach, sacred ground for many Canadians. Our troops spilled a lot of blood there. Just on that beach alone, more than 300 Canadian troops died. Thousands more went on to die as they tried to liberate a wider area in northern France during the Second World War. So a lot of Canadians were upset that there was an attempt to build a condo on that beach. So you heard from the minister there that they're going to be providing nearly $4 million to help make sure that that condo does not go up. He says that that condo will not go up. We're hearing as well that a local government in France is also going to be putting up some money as well to ensure that that beach remains as it is, sacred ground for a lot of Canadians for Canada's contribution to the Second World War.
Is there any early reaction from the Canadians who've been really advocating for the government to take this position and to make this move, David?
Yes. So there's a group that's called Save Juno Beach. They've been doing a lot of letter writing campaigns and a lot of active advocacy in the media. They issued a statement saying that they're very pleased with the announcement, saying that plans by a French developer to overrun the battlefield with condos threaten the sanctity of the site. They're applauding the federal government today. Heather saying that they're happy with this announcement. They're making the right move. So no complaints there.